Jake Anderson wiped the sweat from his brow as he stared at the rusted '68 Mustang sitting in his small Georgia garage. Just another job, he thought, completely unaware that this particular car belonged to Harper Sullivan, a woman worth billions who was hiding more than her wealth. His weathered hands traced the faded red paint, discovering a small compartment under the driver's seat. Inside lay a worn photograph with colors bleeding at the edges and a leather-bound notebook. These items would reveal not just Harper's secrets, but would begin to repair something broken inside him since his wife's passing. This restoration project was about to change everything. Every subscriber means the world to me, and your support keeps these incredible stories coming. If you love heartwarming journeys and unexpected twists, hit that subscribe button and like the video. Jake's life is about to change forever. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Jake Anderson flipped the sign on his garage door from closed to open. The small building at the edge of town had been his sanctuary for over 30 years, where engines spoke to him in a language more familiar than his own heartbeat. He was wiping his hands when Eddie's tow truck rumbled through the early mist. "Got something special for you, Jake," Eddie called out, lowering a car that made Jake's heart sink. What sat on the flatbed was a '68 Mustang, once red but now mostly rust, with a cracked windshield and a body ravaged by decades of neglect. "Who in their right mind wants this fixed?" Jake asked, circling the vehicle with professional skepticism, his weathered face creased with doubt. Eddie shrugged, handing over a sealed envelope. "Didn't catch a name. Just got a call and an address for pickup. Said to deliver it to you specifically." After Eddie departed, Jake opened the envelope and found a handwritten note with a check that made his eyebrows rise. "Make her run again. We'll pay double." The signature was unreadable, but the amount was substantial enough to give him pause. The garage had been struggling since Skylar died. 10 years without his wife had taught Jake many things, but financial management wasn't one of them. Between the mortgage, lingering medical bills, and his son Michael's college tuition, this job could rescue his near-empty bank account. He ran his hand along the Mustang's fender. Most would see junk, but Jake's experienced eye caught the solid frame beneath the decay, the bones of something once beautiful. Someone had loved this car, then abandoned it to time and elements, like so many forgotten dreams. "Guess we're spending some time together," he murmured, seeing something of himself in the car, functional but faded, running on routine rather than passion since Skylar's passing. By noon, Jake had cleared space for the project. He documented each flaw between restoration and ruin. The engine was seized solid. The interior smelled of mildew. Yet underneath lay potential that made Jake's hands itch to begin. While removing the driver's seat, Jake found a weathered photograph wedged between cushion and frame. A young woman stood beside this same Mustang, except the car gleamed candy apple red under sunshine. She clutched wildflowers, her smile radiating joy that transported Jake back to his racing days, dreams he'd packed away when Skylar got pregnant with Michael. Jake tucked the photograph away and worked into the evening, disassembling the engine piece by piece. His mind wandered to the mystery owner and their connection to this particular Mustang. The next morning, Jake slept better than in months, dreams filled with engine sounds rather than bill worries. He was already working on the carburetor when a shadow fell across his workbench. "Good morning." The voice was female, confident, with apprehension beneath the surface. Jake looked up to find a woman in her mid-40s with dark hair touched by silver and eyes that assessed the car with unusual intensity. "I'm Harper," she said, extending a calloused hand that contrasted with her fine watch. "That's my car you're working on." Jake noticed how her gaze never left the Mustang, her fingers twitching slightly. "Made some progress already," Jake offered. "Frame's solid. Engine's a different story." Harper nodded, approaching the car with careful steps. Her hand finally rested gently on the fender. "Take all the time you need," she said quietly. "Just make her run again." After Harper left, Jake returned to the Mustang with renewed curiosity. Not just about the mechanical challenges, but about the woman who valued this particular heap of rust enough to pay double for its restoration. Little did he know that wedged behind the crumbling dashboard lay a leather-bound notebook that would tell a story no amount of money could buy. Jake's fingers brushed against something firm as he reached behind the dashboard to check the wiring. Pulling it free, he found a worn leather notebook, its pages yellowed with age and corners softened from handling. The scent of old leather mingled with engine oil as he hesitated, knowing he was crossing a line between professional curiosity and personal intrusion. With a deep breath, he opened to the first page. June 18, 1978. Bought the Mustang today. $600. Every penny I had saved from picking scrap. The men at the junkyard laughed when I handed over the cash. Girl, like you can't handle a car like that, they said. Maybe they're right, but this car is my ticket out. Tomorrow I start hauling. The entries continued, spanning years. Jake found himself captivated by the determination in each page as the writer chronicled her journey from collecting scrap to building something substantial. The handwriting evolved from uncertain scrawl to confident script. Between the lines, Jake read stories of cold nights, skeptical clients, and relentless perseverance. December 3, 1980. Added a second truck today. The bank manager called me little lady and suggested I bring my husband next time. Told him I don't have or need one. His face when I showed him my books. Priceless. Loan approved. When Harper returned the following morning, Jake was elbow-deep in the engine compartment. She settled onto a metal stool, a silent guardian of the restoration. Day after day she appeared, sometimes bringing coffee, occasionally asking technical questions, but mostly watching with those intense eyes that catalogued every movement of his hands. Found something interesting, Jake said on the fourth day, wiping grease from his hands. A notebook behind the dashboard. He watched as Harper's composure faltered, confidence giving way to vulnerability. Those are private, she said softly. I know. Whoever wrote it was building something impressive from nothing but determination and rusty metal. Harper's eyes filled with pride and pain. She was trying to, she admitted. That girl had more dreams than sense sometimes. You wrote it, Jake acknowledged gently. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of cooling metal. I grew up in a trailer park outside Savannah, Harper finally said, her fingers tracing the Mustang's fender. This car was my first major purchase. My family thought I was crazy spending that money on a car instead of rent. Her smile carried both sadness and triumph. But the Mustang paid for itself. I used it to haul scrap metal, then started buying broken appliances to fix and resell. Jake leaned against the workbench, recognizing in her story echoes of his own abandoned dreams. One truck became 2, then 5, then 20, she continued. By 1990, I had a legitimate trucking company. The Mustang sat in my first warehouse while I built the business, a reminder of where I started. Their exchanges evolved from cautious to comfortable. Harper shared more fragments of her journey, the biases she faced as a female entrepreneur, the decisions that transformed her operation from regional to national. Jake found himself sharing too, the satisfaction of mechanical puzzles, the peace he found in restoration work. You've got a racer's hands, Harper observed, watching Jake adjust the timing belt. Why'd you give it up? The question touched a nerve he thought deadened. Some dreams don't pay the bills, he replied sharply. Harper nodded. Dreams and practicality don't always run on the same track, do they? When the moment came to test the engine, they both held their breath. Jake turned the key, and after a moment's hesitation, the Mustang roared to life, the sound echoing like a triumphant declaration. Harper's eyes shone with unshed tears as she placed her hand on the vibrating hood. Some things just need someone who believes they're worth fixing, she said quietly. Her words hung in the air between them, carrying a truth neither had fully acknowledged until now. The connection forming between Jake and Harper had grown with each passing day as they worked on the Mustang, but neither realized how quickly trust could dissolve in a single moment of revelation. As they cruised along the winding country roads that evening, the restored engine humming beneath them, Harper's laughter floated through the open windows, mingling with the warm Georgia breeze. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, casting a magical glow over the countryside. Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a lightness in his chest, a sense of possibility. The Mustang responded to his touch like an old friend, and Harper's presence beside him felt surprisingly right. "Take that curve faster," Harper urged, her eyes bright with excitement. "She can handle it." Jake obliged, feeling the perfect balance as the Mustang hugged the road. This moment felt like a victory lap for both of them. The peaceful drive slowed as they approached a familiar tow truck parked ahead. Jake felt a subtle shift in the air, like the sudden change in pressure before a storm. Eddie waved enthusiastically, flagging them down. "Jake, haven't seen you out of that garage in forever," Eddie bellowed. His eyes widened when he spotted Harper, a flash of recognition crossing his face. "Well, I'll be Harper Sullivan, the trucking empire Sullivan." Jake's hands tightened on the wheel as Eddie continued. "Saw your feature in Business Quarterly. America's self-made billionaires." The revelation struck Jake like a bent valve in a perfectly tuned engine, sudden, jarring, and threatening to damage everything they'd built. He glanced at Harper, whose face had drained of color. Her eyes met his briefly before looking away, her silence confirming everything. The drive back to the garage was painfully silent. The joy that had filled the car moments before had evaporated, replaced by cold distance. When they finally pulled in, Jake cut the engine and sat still. "Jake," Harper began softly, "I can explain. You're a billionaire," he said flatly. "And you've been pretending to be someone else. Was this some rich lady's game? Slumming it with the small-town mechanic?" "That's not fair," Harper replied. "I never lied about who I am. I just didn't tell you everything." "A pretty significant everything," Jake retorted, turning to face her. "Was I just a charity project? Is that really what you think of me after all this time? That I'd use you like that?" "I don't know what to think," Jake said, stepping out of the car. "I don't know anything real about you anymore." Harper followed him but kept her distance. "People change when they know about my money, Jake. They stop seeing me and only see dollar signs." "So you decided not to trust me with the truth?" Jake asked, betrayal evident in his voice. "After I shared everything with you, my dreams, my failures, my life." "I was going to tell you," Harper said quietly. "I just wanted you to know me, the real me, first." "I have to go to Atlanta," Harper said after a long silence. "There's a business emergency. I'll be back in 2 days." After she left, Jake sat in the quiet garage, wondering if connection could exist between people from such different worlds. The next morning, Michael showed up unexpectedly. "Mom's anniversary got you working on Sundays again?" he asked, noticing the Mustang. "What are you doing here?" Jake asked. "Got a call from Eddie. He told me about your billionaire friend." Jake sighed. "She's not my girlfriend." "Good," Michael said firmly. "Dad, people like that, they live in a completely different reality. They can't understand what it's like for people like us." "Your mother would say that's judgmental," Jake replied, though the same thoughts had been circling his mind all night. "Mom was an optimist," Michael countered. "I'm just looking out for you." Michael's warning lingered in the air as Jake stared at the empty garage doorway. 2 days stretched like eternity while he waited for Harper to return from Atlanta. He'd spent those hours alternating between work on the Mustang and wrestling with his doubts about their growing connection. When her sleek rental car finally pulled into the lot, Jake's heart stuttered despite his best efforts to remain detached. Harper stepped out with hesitation in her movements, a manila envelope clutched in her hands. The morning sun caught in her hair as she approached, her expression a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I don't just want to apologize," she said before Jake could speak. "I want to prove something to you and maybe to myself too." She handed him the envelope with a nervous smile. Inside were official entry forms for the Savannah Vintage Car Rally, one of the most prestigious events in the Southeast. Jake's eyes widened as he scanned the details. The rally was just 3 weeks away. 3 weeks. He glanced at the Mustang. "Harper, we'd need a miracle." "I've seen you work," she said with quiet confidence. "And I've made some changes while I was away." She leaned against the workbench, suddenly looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "I've sold most of my shares in the company. Kept enough to be comfortable, but stepped away from the boardroom battles." "You what? Why would you?" Because I was suffocating in that life, she interrupted. Coming here working on this car with you, it reminded me who I really am. Not the business mogul in the magazine, but the girl who loved the feel of a wrench in her hand. The revelation left Jake speechless. Harper had willingly stepped away from wealth, choosing instead the simple pleasures of small-town life and manual labor. For 21 days they worked with fervor. The garage became their sanctuary. Michael visited often, initially keeping his distance from Harper. But watching her meticulously restore parts slowly melted his reservations. She's nothing like I expected, Michael admitted to Jake one evening. The way she talks about this car, it's like she's restoring a piece of herself. The night before the rally with the Mustang gleaming under the garage lights, Jake found Harper sitting on the hood. What if we fail tomorrow? He asked, voicing his fear. Harper looked up, moonlight in her eyes. Then we fail together. That's still better than succeeding alone. She hesitated. What scares me more is never finding something real, something that matters. Jake nodded. After Skylar died, I was afraid to care about anything that could be taken away. Even this garage became just a place to hide. Their conversation stretched into the night. At dawn, they headed for Savannah, exhausted and exhilarated. At the rally, competitors with professionally restored vehicles sneered. Look at that rust bucket, one snickered. Bet it doesn't make it past the first checkpoint. Harper took the wheel first, handling the Mustang with confidence. They held middle position until a sickening crack followed by grinding metal pierced the air. Rear axle, Jake confirmed grimly. We can limp it, but we're not winning today. Harper's jaw set with determination. Then we limp it. We finish what we started. They watched car after car pass them as they nursed the wounded Mustang across the finish line, coming in last. The competitors who had mocked them collected their trophies with smug expressions. But beside their battle-worn car, Harper burst into laughter. What's so funny? Jake asked. We just proved something more valuable than winning, she said, eyes bright. That car kept going because we believed it could. In that moment, their broken axle seemed less like failure and more like proof their connection could withstand breaking points. Under a canopy of stars, Jake finally understood what they'd built went beyond mechanical. When Harper turned to him, words no longer seemed necessary. Their first kiss, beside the Mustang that had brought them together, felt like crossing another finish line. 1 year after the rally, the gleaming red Mustang sat under the warm Georgia sun, casting a fiery reflection across the newly painted sign that read Harper Sullivan Automotive Trade School. The vintage car, now fully restored to its original glory, had found a permanent home, not as a trophy or showpiece, but as the beating heart of something far more meaningful than either Jake or Harper could have imagined on that starlit night after the rally. The idea had begun as a whispered possibility during the long drive home from Savannah. Harper, still exhilarated from their last-place finish that somehow felt like winning, had turned to Jake with that familiar spark in her eyes. What if we taught others what we know, she'd suggested. There are so many young people out there with mechanical talent but nowhere to develop it. Jake had gripped the steering wheel tighter, a storm of conflicting emotions crossing his weathered face. When Harper presented her vision the following week, complete with financial projections and property options, his resistance emerged immediately. I've managed on my own all these years, he'd said, his voice rough with pride. This feels like charity. The tension lingered between them for weeks. Jake feared becoming another project for Harper to restore. His independence, hard-won through decades of solitary work, felt threatened by her resources and connections. Michael bridged their divide during his college break, witnessing their stalemate with growing concern. Dad, he'd said one evening on the porch, this country faces a critical shortage of skilled mechanics while talented kids have no path forward. This isn't about you, it's about them. His son's words resonated deeply. The next morning, Jake called Harper to revisit her plans. Within 3 months, they transformed an abandoned barn at the edge of town. The metamorphosis was remarkable, old timbers replaced with sturdy beams, the earthen floor now smooth concrete that carried the satisfying echo of footsteps. 8 workstations gleamed under industrial lights, each complete with tools that gave off the comforting scent of machine oil and possibility. The Mustang occupied the center bay, a testament to rebirth through skilled hands. Jake discovered a renewed purpose each dawn. Becoming a teacher challenged him. He'd never considered himself articulate. Yet watching young eyes widen as an engine first caught under their hands gave him satisfaction beyond any solo repair. Their inaugural class included 8 students, 5 boys and 3 girls between 16 and 20. Most came from backgrounds mirroring Jake's youth, talent trapped by economic circumstances. Quiet Darius reminded Jake painfully of his younger self, hesitant to speak but possessing an uncanny intuition about engines. Technical skills alone won't carry them, Harper observed as they evaluated student progress. They need real connections. Harper forged partnerships with regional businesses, creating an approach that balanced hands-on training with apprenticeships at local garages and dealerships. The experienced mechanics are retiring without replacements, she explained to business partners. These students represent your future workforce. As seasons changed, Jake's reservations dissolved. Teaching forced him to articulate knowledge he'd held instinctively for decades, renewing his appreciation for his lifelong craft. 6 months after opening day, Jake led Harper to the Mustang after classes ended. Sunset filtered through tall windows, surrounding the car in amber light. "I've been working on something," he said, revealing a ring fashioned from the original crankshaft, polished to brilliance and set with his mother's small diamond. Harper's eyes widened. "Is that part of what brought us together?" Jake finished. "Seems fitting it should be part of what keeps us together." Her answer came in an embrace, witnessed only by the Mustang that had started their journey. As twilight settles over Georgia, Jake and Harper cruise along quiet back roads in their gleaming Mustang, the engines per-echoing their journey of transformation. The trade school they've built gives underprivileged youth the second chances they both understand deeply. "Every day is a second chance," Harper tells their students, the words that hang above the school's entrance where they first restored that old engine together. Their students don't just rebuild engines, they reconstruct their own narratives. The Sullivan School stands as a testament to restoration in all forms. The Mustang that brought them together now symbolizes possibility, proof that with patience, broken things find not just functionality but purpose. Its enduring roar a reminder that it's never too late to begin again.